So recently, the Boston Globe did an excellent young profile on a young man from Port Huron, Michigan. So now this young person, he ended up growing up Christian, very conservative in that area, and like a lot of people who grow up in that environment, never really question it, anything different until later on. So now, one of the ways that allowed for his transformation from a conservative Christian, an evangelical, to basically a vegan progressive is actually going to a Turning Point USA rally. Well, now that's interesting. So now this young man is 21-year-old Gianni De Trapani. So now in 2016, he ended up casting his first ever vote at 18 for Donald Trump. So now his family, of course, full of Trump supporters. Mother's a very big Trump supporter, as you're going to see from some of the quotes that I have here later on. And the whole town basically full of conservatives and Trump supporters and evangelical Christians. So now what changed is he started going to college. But wait, no, that wasn't the immediate change. Look, he actually went to college and he was prepared to fight against liberals, right? To fight against the libtards. And so he memorized talking points from Fox News and he's ready to fight to defend his, conservative Christian beliefs, right? He would get in debates with liberals and progressives, couldn't wait to be challenged. Young conservative firebrand, right? So now, one thing that kind of distanced him from the Republican Party, or at least Republican Party talking points, and this is actually extends to a lot of younger conservatives, is the fact that he was worried about climate change. He believed that climate change was, at least men had contributed to climate change. And so, yes, like a lot of younger people, even younger conservatives, he was worried about the planet. And so, in fact, like I said, he shares a lot of that with a lot of younger conservatives, which I think is excellent. According to an Ipsos survey taken back in September, some 77% of young Republicans, these are millennial Gen Z conservatives, they actually say that climate change is a serious threat to the country and to the world. I love it. Okay. They actually accept the facts. That's what I love. Now, 59% of Republicans in that same poll also backed the idea of a Green New Deal. So that was back actually before it was put into policy, to be fair. So now, young conservatives, very concerned about the climate, as was this young gentleman. So now, that actually led to the split between DiTrapani and the conservative movement and the Trump movement. So now, this was during a Turning Point event. This was held at Michigan State University. So look, there he met Ben Shapiro and he was like, "Oh my God, I love how you debate," which is hilarious because all he does is talk really, really fast. That's Ben Shapiro's debate style, right? Talk really, 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 really fast. Okay. But all right. So it wasn't Ben Shapiro that was there because actually, when Shapiro was speaking, he's like, "Hey, don't just follow people blindly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera," right? So that's funny because the next speaker, Sebastian Gorka, did just that. He's like, follow Trump, he's a god, basically. He is the messiah for conservatives. So DiTrapani looks at that and is like, wait a minute. Okay, that's a little strange. But really, when he started to be disturbed is when they started talking about fossil fuels. In fact, there was a speaker named Alex Epstein who said during his speech that increased CO2 emissions, carbon emissions, were actually a good thing. They were a positive sign of economic development. Oh, see, more CO2, good. That means jobs. That means economic development. That means great things. But what about the climate? We don't care about the climate. In fact, that same speaker passed out I love fossil fuel pins. Okay. So now he said that when that happened, he was very disturbed and that he did not like the fact that so many of his fellow conservatives were actually cheering on the rhetoric that completely was completely contradicted by basic scientific understanding. He's like, I'm surrounded by stupid people. In fact, he told the Globe, quote, "Is this what conservatives really think?" Yes. It is what they think. They literally think that climate change is a hoax, that it's not real, that it's perpetrated by the wealthy elites like Al Gore in order to raise your taxes. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. That's what they think. Uh, he said, quote, the climate really changed my mind. The environment also led him to becoming a vegan. So he was so worried that he decided to give up meat. Which, look, I give him great, great credit for that because that's something that I can't do. Like, that's one of my personal failings, and I'll be honest about that. I think that like that is a huge, huge thing, and he's not like going around and saying you need to do that, you need to do that, you need to do that. But he's just saying, look, I can't do that anymore. I think cutting down on my meat consumption actually does help out with the environment, and he did convince his mom to do the same thing. Again, mom, super Christian, conservative, Trump loving person. And even she's like, yeah, I'm actually kind of worried about the environment now. Enough for me to actually go vegan. And not only that, but I'm actually healthier because of it. Wonderful. Okay, great. Now, something else that led DiTrapani down the road to progressivism is the fact that he's also gay. Now, at first, he's like, look, yeah, I'm gay, but I'm not letting that get in the way of my conservatism because my main focus is economic. I want lower taxes, less regulation. Now, of course, that's another major shift among young conservatives. They're actually less socially conservative, and they're more concerned about the individual, right? Oh, I want individual liberty. I want less taxes for corporations because that means more jobs, etc. And, less regulation because regulation kills business. Okay. Now, again, big shift, right? And the reason is a lot of young people now they've grown up with people who are gay. They get friends that are gay, that are transgender, and so they're like, that's not a big deal for me. These people, they're like, these are my friends, these are my family. They're fine. I don't care. I don't care if somebody's gay. That doesn't impact me. That doesn't hurt my liberty, right? My personal freedom. So look, I'm not affected by it. Okay. Now, again, this is a trend among younger conservatives who are actually becoming more socially liberal, but are still, again, massively fiscally conservative. So now it's mainly the older Republicans that are more anti-gay. So now, by his sophomore year in college, back to Gianni here, he actually became a fan of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So gay, vegan, progressive. And that, of course, got him into a little bit of trouble with his family. At one point, his mom snapped during a discussion and said, what are you, a libtard? Not good. So, but look, generally, his mom tries not to get into arguments with him as much because she is still super Christian, super conservative, and still pro Donald Trump. Okay. So now there's a few reasons why this story was so interesting to me. And you should go and read it. It's the Boston Globe. And I'll have a link to it in the description of the story. But for one, hey, Michigan. Like, we're both sons of Michigan. Gotta love it, right? But no, more, it's about how people are changing, right? How even conservatives are changing and becoming more liberal. So one thing that really kind of stuck out to me is his mother, right? Again, diehard conservative. And the reason that she's a conservative, other than her religion, of course, is that she sees or she is overwhelmed by what she sees as the rapid pace of change in American culture. She said, quote, I don't want to know everything. I just want it to be like it was, you know? Look, so there are people, and I've met people like this before, and I know people like this before. They have this romanticized version of when they were growing up and when they didn't know anything, right? Back then, oh, it was a simpler time, right? Well, in reality, it actually wasn't a simpler time. There were mass movements, there were protests, there were people fighting for their rights all across the country. You look back in the 60s, and that was a time of huge social change and movement. But some of these people will look back in that past and think, well, I had it simple. Things were simple for me. I wasn't involved in this stuff. But that's because you were young. That's because you were a child. And let's be honest, it's also because you didn't have the internet. You didn't have these communications. You had 3 news channels at most. And that was it. That was it. That was your relationship to the world. So things for you were much more simpler back then. But in reality, it's as complex as ever. And so they have this fake romanticized view. And that's what always surprises me about, conservative Trump supporters. So like, well, I just want to make America great again. I want to bring it back to the way it was. No, the way it was for you is that you didn't have to worry about things. And that's the thing. I didn't have to worry about other people. I didn't have to worry about using the right pronoun. I didn't have to worry about misgendering somebody. Why can't things go back to being simple? That's their main problem. Whereas in the progressive side, our main problem is that we have people dying from lack of health insurance. We have wages that are stagnant. We have people literally sleeping in the street. We have people that are dying from lack of insulin. They can't afford their medications. That's the big difference between conservative values and the conservative point of view and the progressive point of view. We want it simple, the conservatives say. And simple means going backwards. Simple means regressing. Whereas progressives, we actually want solutions to real problems. Now, who's living in La La Land, right? It ain't progressives. There's more. Okay. So here's the thing. I know I seem very sympathetic to this woman, but remember, she also, like, her votes and her support of Donald Trump hurts people. For example, she still supports Donald Trump's immigration policies that have literally locked children in cages. People have died in those detention centers. And so, as much as I want to feel bad for her, I kind of can't because of those simple things, because of what she does and what she supports and how it actually hurts real people. Okay. Now, the other thing that I found super fascinating is how much the newest generation has actually changed. Again, the conservatives, less conservative, more progressive. For example, you have a lot of young Republicans that are saying maybe we should have a carbon tax. Maybe we should support the Green New Deal. And maybe we wish our party was not so horrible when it comes to climate change. Even this Trump supporting mom came around to the idea of wanting to push Republicans, the party, to do something about climate change. But they won't. And we know why. It's because of money in politics. We have these politicians that are 100% bought off by these giant fossil fuel corporations. These companies, look, Turning Point USA, for example, funded by the Koch brothers. Koch brothers made billions of dollars. They made their fortune off oil, off fossil fuels. But hey, man, look, I hope Gianni keeps trying to get through to her. Maybe he will have a breakthrough. And the reason that I love this story is it's about change, right? It's about how people can change, how people can change their beliefs. And it happens all the time. I love it when people change their beliefs when they're presented with new evidence. And that's important. When you get new perspectives, when you get new points of view. I love that. And look, the reason that I love Bernie Sanders, by the way, is because he's been consistent. But at the same time, I love it when people change their mind based on the facts. I love the stories of former conservatives, diehard Republicans, Trump supporters, etc., when they embrace the light, so to speak, and come to being a progressive. I love stories like that. There is something inherently wonderful about that. Not just in gaining a new ally, but seeing somebody that wakes up. I love to see it. So, look, as a fellow Michigander, I welcome people like Gianni. I love it. I'm glad they're part of the movement. And I hope he and the other young people, young Republicans, come around to our side to change the world and make things better for not only for people who believe in liberal values, so to speak, but everyone. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm gonna have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc. We're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.